Hello everyone and welcome to Nervous Nessie. This is the channel where we take travel and anxiety and make them work together. Today we're going to be talking about booking flights. Now, when it comes to booking flights, there can be a lot of anxiety around this. Am I booking the correct flight? Am I getting the right price? Which seat do I choose and why? We're going to cover all of this in the video today. When it comes to booking flights, you want to try and pick an airline and stick with it. There's a reason for this, and that is you want to build a loyalty with that airline. You can sign up with the airline to get loyalty points, and these points can give you lots of perks. These perks can include upgrades for your seat, maybe your meals, maybe when you board your flight, whether you're boarding sooner than everyone else or later than everyone else. When you stay with a specific airline, they will learn your preferences. That can be what you order, where you like to sit, all kinds of things. So building up loyalty points with one single airline will go a long way to help you for future trips. Now you may be thinking, well, which airline should I choose? Well, that's up to you, what you prefer. Some airlines have certain reputations, so you want to kind of do your research on the specific airlines. There are some airlines out there that have horrible reputations. They're always late. They always have problems. People don't like the service because it's just terrible service. Look into the various airlines of which one you would want to prefer. Do you not care about the service? You just really care about the price? Go with one airline. Are you willing to pay more for better service and never having your flights being late? Maybe go with a different airline. I've tried several different airlines and I have found the one that works for me. I'm not going to say which one it is just because I don't want to show a preference. You kind of need to shop around and see what works for you. One thing to consider is some airlines, they'll let you pick your seats. Some airlines, they don't let you pick your seats. It's literally first come, first serve. For me, I want to pick my seat. I have had it happen where I get on an airline and they don't let me pick my seats and I am stuck in the worst seat, the seat that I absolutely just do not want, which we'll cover the seats here in just a minute. One way to save a little bit of money when it comes to booking flights is to be flexible with the dates. You know your trip, where you want to go, and you can kind of take off work whenever you want to, just as long as you give notice. Then you can be flexible with your dates. Instead of having hard dates, I want to travel on the 1st of June to the 7th of June, and that's the only time that I can travel, then you're gonna be locked into a certain rate. And really your only options are going to be either booking indirectly, which we talked about that a little bit in a previous video, or you're gonna have to shop the different airlines to see which one is your cheapest, best option for those specific dates. But if you're flexible with your dates and you say, I want to travel between the beginning of May and the end of July. You've got three months there that you can choose whatever date, and you can look at all the different dates and shop around for the best price during that time. So that's a great way to save money. And speaking of saving money, you want to save money on flights. Realistically, when it comes to booking a trip, your flights are probably going to be the most expensive part of a trip. Yeah, you have to pay for your lodging, but when you look at the overall cost of what you're getting, 7 nights in a hotel at $100 a night, $700. Flights from point A to point B and back, those could be over $1,000 depending on where you're going, if not more. So you really want to be cautious when it comes to booking your flights and make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck. A great way to do this is by booking in advance. If you know your rough estimate dates, then you can go ahead and book months in advance to lock in the best price. Now, with the fluctuation of everything that's going on these days, sometimes the airlines aren't even booking that far in advance. I have a trip that I want to book in December and the flights aren't even available yet because it's too soon for me to book. And now I have to either wait a little bit to make sure I stay with that airline, or I have to switch over to a different airline and go ahead and lock in those super cheap rates because I'm booking this far in advance. So you want to do everything you can to keep the costs down while still getting a good value for your money. Now, when you book your flight, you want to make sure that you're reading all of the fine print. Look at what you're getting. Are you getting a meal while you're on your flight? Are you getting free checked luggage, or are you going to also have to pay for more just because of your luggage? One tip is just carry carry-on. You don't have to worry about checked luggage, and that saves you some money. We talked about that a little bit in our previous video. Another thing when it comes to reading the fine print on booking your flight, before you hit book, reread over everything. Do it 2 or 3 times if you have to. I do. I always look over and make sure, okay, is this the correct airport? Going to this correct airport? What are my times? What time am I leaving? What time am I arriving? Am I going to have a connecting flight? It's not just a one way. You're having to stop halfway and then get on another plane and go the rest of the way. You need to look at all of those things and think about that when it comes to booking your flights, and especially your arrival times. Now, if you arrive and it's at a crazy time, let's say it's in the middle of the night, can you check into your hotel? Can you check into your hostel? Sometimes hotels and hostels have cutoffs of when you can check in. So if you're arriving in the middle of the night and you can't check in, what are you going to do? So you have to plan that ahead of time. You also have to think of getting to the airport. Is traffic going to be terrible? Am I going during rush hour to get to the airport? That's going to add to your anxiety. Hurry, I've got to get there. I've got to get to the airport. I've got to get to the airport. Don't just save yourself the trouble. Just go ahead and try to book your leaving time at the airport at a time that is not going to be around all of the heavy traffic. When it comes to booking a flight, you probably want to do just a one-stop trip. Point A to point B. Simple. You get on the plane, don't worry about anything until you arrive. Simple. That is the preferred way to go if you have anxiety. I prefer to do that. However, with the way that things have been going lately, a lot of airlines are really not doing just the single trips like that. They are breaking it down into multiple legs of the trip. What I do is when you have the layover, that is the time period of when you get from A to B and you're waiting to go to C, which is your final destination. That layover is the time of when you get off the plane, you're sitting there waiting at the airport, and then you get on the second plane to go to your final destination. My advice to you is a layover should be no less than 1 hour. I usually do anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. The reason why is, what if your first plane was running late? And now you have to literally run through the airport to get to your second plane before it takes off. If you have a layover less than 30 minutes, that is a very real possibility. I prefer hour to an hour and a half. And you're thinking, yeah, but it's killing part of my trip time. It is. So you have to think of anxiety versus time. Which one is important to you? Are you needing to hurry and get to your destination? Or are you just not wanting to have to worry about anything? Which one is important? I try to stay away from long layovers. Long layovers is really anything 2.5 hours and longer. Sometimes you kind of can't help it. The layovers are just longer. 6 hours, 10 hours, whatever. Then you have the option. Do you stay in the airport? Or do you go outside and maybe explore? And really it all depends on kind of your situation. Do you have anxiety and you're worried about missing your next flight? Or do you want to just go out and take advantage of that time and use the time to explore around the area? If you book your flight in advance and you know that you're going to have a long layover, then you can plan and see what is not far from the airport, not too far, but just out of the airport to where you can go and do those things. Always keep in mind that when you come back to the airport, you're going to have to go back through the TSA security line, and that's going to take time. I have seen TSA security lines that were so ridiculously long. Everyone in that line, every single person missed their flight. And I prefer to not have to worry about that. Yeah, I may have blew through TSA security when I got on my first flight, but if I leave the airport and then come back and now I'm going to have to wait for 30, 45 minutes, an hour in the TSA line again, then it's not really worth it. So I try to keep my layover times down. Hour and a half is pretty good. And an hour to an hour and a half goes by pretty fast when you're in the airport. You can always grab a quick bite to eat, maybe explore some of the shops in the airport. Maybe you can take a quick power nap before getting on the plane again. There's stuff to do in an airport that will kill an hour to an hour and a half time. So when you book your flights, look at your times. Look and see if you're making multiple flights or if it's just the one single flight. Read the fine print. It's very important. If you're booking your flight in advance, check back on your flight. Now, what I mean by that is I recently booked a flight in February for July. My flight is in July, and I booked it in February so I could lock in a good rate, which was a very good thing to do because the prices shot up so drastically with all of the gas prices going up and everything since then. So I locked in that rate. However, I got notification when I went into my flight to check on it, my flight has changed. That flight no longer exists. It's not even there. So now the airline has suggested a somewhat similar flight. Gave me a different time for leaving, different time for arrival, but it's still within the same airline. When the airlines do this, usually they will let you know, but not always. So it's always a good idea to periodically check on your flight if you've booked way in advance. And when they do this, they will put the notification on there and they'll ask you, this new flight that we gave you, does this work for you? If you look at the times and everything and you go, it works, then you can accept it. Go ahead and accept that flight. For me, the times that they gave me didn't work. It was going to put me getting to my hotel late and I wouldn't be able to check in. So a lot of times they'll give you a kind of freebie to be able to redo those flights and pick the one you want at no extra charge. I was able to get a flight that was just a few hours later than my original plan, but at least now I'm able to check into my hotel. When you go through the booking process, you might see something on there about TSA PreCheck. If you have the TSA PreCheck, and we'll get into that in a future video, but if you have it, go ahead and add your known traveler number to your flight. What this does is it will attach it to the flight and you can go through the TSA PreCheck line without having to do anything else. If for some reason you forget to add the TSA PreCheck to your flight when you're booking it, don't worry. All you have to do is either go into your flight and add the TSA PreCheck after you've booked your flight, or you can even wait until you get to the airport, go to the kiosk, and add it in there. The only way that TSA PreCheck is going to work is if it is added to your flights. And this is for each flight, meaning your flight to your destination, as well as your flight from your destination. You can't just add it to the first leg of your trip and expect it to be added to the second. Make sure it's added to both legs of your trip. If you don't add the TSA PreCheck and you get into the TSA PreCheck line, when you get up there and show them your ticket and show them your TSA PreCheck card, they're going to turn you away. I had this happen first time that I forgot to put it on there, and I said, I have TSA PreCheck. See, I have my card. I have it. I've been approved. I am a known traveler by the government. But it wasn't on the flight. So I had to get out of the line, go to the kiosk, add it to my flight, and get back in line and start all over again. Save yourself the hassle. Put it on your flight as you're booking. If you forget, just do it before you get into that TSA PreCheck line. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting time. Now let's talk seats. You've picked your flight, looked at your times, read the fine print, know where you're going. Let's pick your seats for your flight. There's tons of options because planes are quite big, and there's a lot of pros and cons to each seat location. Now I have printed out this very, very simple layout of a plane, and I'll show it in the video as well so you can really see what I'm talking about, but I also wanted to show it here while I'm talking. This is a basic plane. There's not the middle row of seats or anything like that. This is just a basic layout of a plane. And you have your different seats, A, B, C, and D. And when you get onto your flight, you'll look at row 1, seat D. There's your seat. Don't have to worry about anything. There you go. And so when you're booking your flight, it's going to ask you, what seat do you want to sit in? And you can pick whichever seat you want. But keep in mind, each one is a different price. Now with this layout, there's only the 2 seats and the 2 seats. But with most major airlines, you're actually going to have 3 seats and 3 seats. Each seat has its own pro and con, and we're going to go through each one. Now, if you choose anything along the edge of the plane, that is going to be considered your window seat. And there's pros and cons to the window seat. A pro, you get a view. You're sitting right next to the window and you can look out that window. You can also control the shade of the window. Maybe you're on a different time zone and you want to take a nap while you're on your flight and you want to close the shade. You can do that. You're sitting right there at the window and you can control it. The people that are sitting next to you, whether it's the middle seat or the outside seat, they can't control the window because you're sitting there. Now they could obviously ask you, hey, do you mind closing the window or opening the window? And depending on what you want to do, you could say yes or no, but it really is up to you because you're seated next to the window. Now, a con of sitting next to the window is you're kind of trapped in. You have someone else sitting outside next to the aisle, and if you need to get up and go to the bathroom, you're going to have to step over them. What if they're sleeping and you don't want to wake them up? Then that's one thing to consider. So a pro of the window seat is you get the view, you get to control the window, but you're going to have to crawl over everyone else to get out. And getting off the plane, you're going to have to wait for those people to get out of your way before you can get off the plane. Another great thing for the window seat is you can sleep against it. You have a wall right there. You can simply lean your head against the wall and take a nap. I've done that many times. It's better than trying to hold my head up the whole time. The next option is going to be your aisle seat. Now the aisle seat is literally against the aisle. You can get up, walk out, nobody's blocking you in. That's a great advantage. I prefer the aisle seat just for that advantage. I hate having to ask somebody to move so I can get out of a seat. The only downside is you don't get the window, you don't get the view. If you're wanting to take a nap and person is sitting there with the window wide open and the sun is glaring through, then you could ask them, but they don't have to close that. A great option for that though is to bring an eye mask. Just carry a simple eye mask to cover your eyes, and then you don't even have to worry about the window. Now the third option, and like I said, in this drawing, it doesn't have the third seat, but the third option is the middle seat. Do not book this seat. Don't do it. Don't book this seat. The only time that you want to book the middle seat is if you're flying with someone else, and that other person's going to sit in the window seat or the aisle seat next to you. Don't book the middle seat if you're flying alone. Why? The only reason why is it's the last seat left on the flight. Because middle seat means you're not only trapped in by this person, you also can't control the window. And so what happens is you're kind of squeezed in. I've been on flights where the person has really broad shoulders and they take up a lot of room, and I'm smaller, but if you have a big guy and a big guy here and they've got broad shoulders, you're kind of like this for hours flying. You can't get out, you can't close the window. Yeah, you've got major anxiety because you can't move. So don't book the middle seat unless you absolutely have to, or if you're flying with someone else, that way they can kind of give you more room or you can lean onto them. Now, not only do the individual seats matter on the plane, but also the location of the plane also matters. The more you go toward the front of the plane, the more expensive it is. First class is up here at the front. Then you have your more business class, economy, coach, and you'll notice the prices are drastically cheaper the further you go back in the plane. But there's pros and cons to both the front and the back of the plane. A great pro of being at the front of the plane is that you get on and off the plane first. You're right there. You come in and you're right there. You enter, here's your seat. And then you get off and you don't have to worry about anyone from here back on this plane. Another great thing, even if you're not in first class, let's say you're up here in the more business class where you've spent a little extra on your tickets. You are first to get the food. The food cart most likely will come this way, unless you're on a very, very large plane where you have a food cart coming this way and a food cart coming from the back of the plane. You'll probably get the food first. This guarantees that they do not run out of food. And I'm here to tell you, airlines do run out of food. And they do run out of food options. They may have food, but if you're at the very back of the plane, by the time they get to you, everything that was a meal option may not be available. I took a trip once and I literally was on this very back seat, and by the time the food got to me, all of the meals were gone, completely gone. And my only option for food during this long flight was pretzels, little candies, not very filling. I was starving by the time I got off the flight. Another pro of being toward the front of the plane is you are away from the bathrooms. Stay away from the bathrooms. Let me tell you, the smells from the bathrooms do waft toward the front of the plane. So the further you are away from those smells, yeah, don't book a seat at the back of the plane. Even though it's cheap, I'm telling you, it is worth it to spend 10, 15 extra bucks per ticket to move away from the bathroom. In addition to sitting next to the bathroom, you may not have smells. It may not be that bad. Maybe it's not a long flight and people aren't having stomach issues that day, and you're extremely lucky. However, if you're sitting at the back of the plane next to the bathrooms, you're going to have a line form for the bathroom. This means as you're sitting in your seat, someone's standing right here next to you, hovering, waiting for the bathroom. It is awkward, it is weird, and you're just sitting there like, can you move? But they can't because they're waiting in line for the bathroom. So by sitting at the back of the plane, you're gonna have to deal with that. Now, you may be thinking, okay, I want to sit at the front of the plane. You have your first class option. Now, this is a great option if money is no problem for you, because first class is expensive. You pay for what you get. Now, is it worth it? Yes and no. It depends on the flight. I have flown first class and it has been worth it. I have flown first class and it was not worth 1 penny more than a normal ticket. It every time depends on the specific flight. By sitting in the first class, you get tons of legroom. You could be 6'5" and not have to worry about a thing. I'm shorter, I don't worry about it, but compared to how cramped the seats are toward the back, and if you can see the gap between the seats, there's a huge gap. Here the gap gets a little smaller. Here there's barely a gap. That you're just sitting upright. You're not able to relax out with your legs if you're not sitting in first class. But first class, you have all the leg room in the world. Also with first class, usually they have a little divider right here. It's a little curtain that they pull and it makes it more exclusive. What they do is they have an attendant, a steward, stewardess that caters to just these people. Whereas one person can take care of these people, 2 people have to take care of all of these people. So you get a more one-on-one service if you're in the first class. By getting the first class, you also get better meals. Sometimes, depending on the duration of the flight, if you're in the back part of the plane, a meal may not be offered at all. You might get a little snack box, but that's it. Whereas first class, you might actually get a full meal by sitting in the front. Even if you're getting a meal because it's a long trip and you're in the back of the plane, the meals in the first class is a huge upgrade. So you're paying for the leg room, the more one-on-one service, and better meals. The only time that I've really tried to book first class is if it's a long flight. We're talking anything that's about 6 hours or longer. That's when I kind of start looking at the first class prices, because I need more leg room. Even though I'm short, my legs start aching on flights and I want to be able to stretch out and move around. Otherwise, it makes me more anxious and my legs start to hurt. So I will sometimes upgrade to the first class if it's going to be a rather long flight. Another thing to consider is even though it may not be a long flight, you can actually upgrade your flight before getting on the plane. If there is still room on the flight, let's say not all of the first class has been booked, and it's within about 30 minutes before boarding time, you can go up to the counter there while you're waiting for your flight and ask them, is first class available? Are there an upgrade in seats? You can do the same thing if you're sitting back here and you want to upgrade to the more business class. You can ask if there's an upgrade option. The airlines want to get as much money as they can out of you. And so of course they would love to sell those more expensive seats. When you first book your flight, let's say going from a regular seat to the first class may cost $500 more. But if it's 30 minutes or less before your flight, they want to try and fill those seats. And so you can go up and ask them, do you have a first class seat available? Or do you have a business class seat available? And they'll look and see, and if they do have that available, then maybe you only pay $100 and get that upgraded seat. So now you've saved yourself the $400 difference and you get a better seat. But that's not always the case. Sometimes they book the flight completely to capacity, and sometimes they even overbook the flight. So whenever you go to check in for your flight, don't wait. As soon as you get a notification for your flight that it's time to check in immediately. Even if it's the day before and you're in the middle of doing things, immediately check in for your flight, because all of these seats on the plane are already booked, not only for you, but for somebody else. And so it's kind of a first come, first serve on who checks in. If you check in while you're at the airport, ready to go on your flight, you may not have a seat. They may have given it to someone else. And now you've lost your flight and they're going to have to put you on a different flight, which will throw a total wrench in your entire travel plans. Another seat to consider is your exit rows. This right here, where the little arrows are the exit rows. They're the actual doors on the side of the plane that you can open in case of an emergency. You may come in at the front instead of here in the middle of the plane, and if you notice, it's over the wings of the plane, which means it's the exit row. You can choose these seats. Sometimes I've seen it when the prices are the similar price as the other seats. Sometimes these seats cost a little more. And there's pros and cons to sitting in the exit row. You can see you get all of this legroom, all this extra legroom. So that's great. You're getting actually more legroom than you do with the first class. However, if you have a carry-on and a personal item that you're taking onto the plane, you can't put your carry-on and or your personal item under the seat in front of you every time. Sometimes you can, but not always. So take that into consideration. Also, you are responsible for these doors. If an emergency happens, you have to be able to open those doors. And that's a kind of a moral responsibility, you know, your ethics and do I have the fortitude to be able to open the door for other people and instruct people to go out? That falls on you if you sit in the exit row. And when you get on the plane and you're sitting in an exit row, the crew member there is going to come around and they're going to ask every person in that row, do you feel comfortable? opening the door in case of an emergency. And if for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable, they will move you from that seat and put you in another seat, and they will find someone that will be willing to open that door. So if you paid more for that seat so you could have that extra leg room, if you're not willing to open that door and you tell them that, then you're going to lose your seat because somebody else would love to have that instant free upgrade. If you're on the flip side of that and you're seated in one of the more cheaper seats, and they come around and they say, hey, we need someone who can volunteer to sit in the exit row, I'll volunteer. I'm getting an upgraded seat. I have no problem opening that door in case of an emergency. And of course, emergencies where you would need to open that door are few and far between anyways, so you might as well agree to it. Now, another seat to consider is the wall seat. Right here is a wall on this plane. That means, yes, these seats in row 7 have tons and tons of leg room. However, there's no seat in front of them to put the items, the personal item or a small carry-on, underneath the seat in front of you. So what happens is if you have that item, you're going to have to put it in the overhead bin. And if you're on a large plane with a lot of people and everybody's got carry-ons and that sort of thing, and there's no room to put your stuff overhead, they're going to have to put it in checked luggage, which means you're going to have to pay for your checked luggage that you weren't intending to pay for, and take the possibility of that getting lost because it was put down there at the very last minute before the plane took off. So consider that before you choose a seat right here up against the wall. One final tip for you is, like I said, in this drawing you only have the 2 seats, but in most planes you have the 3 seats. Don't book the middle seat. Nobody wants that. However, if you are seeing all the seats that are taken when you go to select your seat, and they are color-coded on here, you'll see where this one's taken, that one's taken, that one's taken, and you have the 3 seats. If you know which seat you want to sit in, whether it's the aisle or the window, and let's say someone has booked this window seat, I will book the aisle seat on that same row. That means you have your seat is on the aisle, an empty seat, and the window seat is already taken. It is less likely for someone to book that middle seat because everybody that flies knows that you don't book the middle seat unless you absolutely have to. So there is the possibility, if it is a flight that is not going to be completely full, that middle seat never gets booked. And then you have even more room. You may make friend with the person who is sitting in the window seat, and you guys split that middle seat. Put snacks or, one of your bags in that middle seat and kind of spread out. Same thing goes with if, let's say, you get very lucky and you're on a flight and you're the only person in that row. You maybe book the window seat and nobody's sitting in the middle or the aisle seat. You can stretch out on those seats. And I have had that happen a time or two, and it is fantastic. You just lift up the armrest, and now you have like a little small couch that you can just kind of lay out on, spread your stuff out on. It's rare that happens though, but if it does, take advantage of it and just spread out. Of course, in the takeoff, in the landing, you're going to have to be in your seat with your seatbelt on, but during the flight, you can raise those armrests and lay and stretch out as much as you want. Hopefully that happens to you because it was great when it happened to me. I hope this video kind of helped answer some questions that you may have when it comes to booking flights. I know we kind of glossed over everything, and I haven't shown you specifically how to book a flight. Usually it's pretty self-explanatory when you go onto a website Whether it's booking directly with the airline or booking indirectly with another company, it's kind of self-explanatory. It goes step by step. Just make sure you're reading the fine print as you're going through to make sure you're getting the right flight for you. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe and share. That way you can find out whenever the next video is going to come out. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye!